And to make sense of what the McBride saga, we joined in studio by Johan Kotze, a lawyer. Thanks so much, Johan, for your time. What does this all mean? Because the judgment is not necessarily on the merits of the allegations against Robert McBride. It's more on procedural processes.
That is indeed so. However, I think we must bear in mind and take one step backwards in that although it is procedural, what has been challenged was exactly that, the minister's power to be inconsistent, particularly with section 206, subsection 6 of the Constitution itself. And it's those provisions of the SAPS Act, the South African Police Service, and the Ipid Act, that when it gives those police head, in this instance, the minister, those powers to meddle, so to speak, as it's called, in the affairs, and it's that provision which has been ruled unconstitutional. The implications here is that the Minister of Police knew this already as early as June 2015, yet elected to go through this whole process up to now. The 30 days, and I think this is important to highlight, the 30 days provision which the court has enhanced, where the Parliament now can act to institute new or a fresh disciplinary, as it's called. That has always been the provision there, and that is actually being done if one have regard to the paperwork here in at the behest of the McBride team. We must bear in mind that very early already in the way that he has requested to address the portfolio committee that deals with the disciplinary, and it was rejected. So he's already offered to be part of this process before all of this.
All right, but is this early vindication for Robert McBride, as you were saying, that he was not exonerated of the charges and still would be subjected to a parliamentary hearing or disciplinary for that matter? Is this early vindication for him, you think?
I wouldn't say it's early vindication. It's too early for us to say that. However, the process itself will now be much more public, and it will be much more focus on it itself and onto the actual merits of it. And as we know, that comes with all sorts of baggage here regarding Dramat, the Hawks, etc., and all of those parties' involvement.
Exactly. So what does that mean in terms of who salutes who, in terms of the hierarchy? And if you don't report to the echelons of the security cluster, which is the police ministry, then it means the autonomy of Ipid and Hawks and the likes is essentially guaranteed.
Yes, that is the key of us all. Ipid, we must remember, is an institution that's been brought about as a watchdog of the police and its actions. That is what it does. It investigates the actions and wrongfulness of whoever there's law authorities involved. It goes without saying, and the judge particularly pointed this out in today's judgment by saying that it's very complex and very problematic that when you have a member of the executive like the Minister of Police that can control such a body, and at the same token can also by implication control the South African police services, which at the end of the day leads to some form of contamination. And in terms of a constitution, that is where the problem lies. Mr. McBride stated earlier today that it was exactly to illustrate the independence of Ipid to stand separately, and Ipid, and specifically his position, can only be dealt with by Parliament. Parliament can remove him, can take action against him, can institute disciplinary in terms of a procedure. That is not new, that has always been. However, it was the Minister of Police that elected to proceed in the manner in how he has done. And this, of course, for him now, we've heard about certain calls for his resignation tonight. We know now that this is in effect the third judgment. If we add up the Dramat matter, we add up Nkandla, and now we have this aspect here. It's certainly an issue.
It's an issue, I mean, as one commentator was saying, in terms of the credibility of cabinet in itself, and particularly how intergovernmental relations have been severed and all of this playing out in the public domain. But do you think that there may be criminal charges laid against Robert McBride if there's sufficient evidence?
It might very well be attempted, it might very well be alluded to. It's again early to say. However, it's my opinion that the merits of that would be a futile exercise. And there's, of course, the risk that the Ministry of Police will be tarnished, so to speak, again with why would that be necessary, what is the grounds for that in that particular instance. Without delving too much into the merits, this whole debacle spins about two reports. It was made in respect of Dramat and another party. The second report, McBride has always stood by, and that has indeed been what he's confirmed today. And as a matter of fact, he's laid down the gauntlet very publicly this afternoon, and he stated, and his exact words was, "Bring it on." And I do believe that this particular instance, it's early days, but I do believe that there's going to be some very serious repercussions for this whole Hawks Ipid, Ministry Police has intertwined this with the NPA and all of this elements, which is becoming very, I think, confusing for the public out there.
But is there also the concern that there could be abuse of power, if you will, now that only Parliament has the jurisdiction to intervene in issues of Ipid, and that if they're given this autonomy, rather, that there could potentially be abuse of that power?
There could be abuse. The difficulty is, and where it's a more safer option to go that way, is that, of course, parliamentary and portfolio committees comprises out of several members of the opposition and its representative accordance. So therefore the process is far more transparent than a disciplinary hearing simply conducted in Pretoria behind closed doors, with chairpersons being appointed by the ministry, etc. So there is some checks and balances. It's a more transparent position, and it's very much akin to that of the public protector to an extent. This is a very, very important position Mr. McBride holds.
But how do we deal with the ambiguity, as you were saying, around the confusion, what the public protector's powers were and how they were interpreted when it comes to Ipid, but particularly the amendment of the laws that have led to this confusion?
Yes, the difficulty, it's, I don't want to be too harsh about it, but the reality is that Parliament was told substantial time ago that you have 24 months to amend these laws. They are in conflict with the Constitution, and certain portions of it put it that way. And they've not acted on it, or no steps were taken. Then we had December 2015 when this judgment was given, the one which was today sent up for confirmation. And till to date, nothing has been done about it. So the difficulty here is that it's the only way to potentially explain it is that the ministry in this instance is simply going ahead and acting knowing full well that there is this judgment. Just like in the Thuli Mandela matter, there was this judgment given. I mean, it needs to be followed through. It's time that perhaps our officialdom and our executive arm starts taking note of judgments when matters are tested and start following them and not push them to the ultimate limit.
Yeah. Do you think it's sufficient for the minister to fall on his sword now that the Concord has made the ruling?
I do believe that he has got some explanation now to offer. And I think he needs to come forward and once and for all decisively deal with this whole mess, for the lack of a better word, we found ourselves in. We have McBride, we have Anwa Dramat, we know that he signed an exit package and he went from there. Now we have General Sabia and his involvement in it. We also know that there's various other police officials and officers that's also been dragged into this rendition episode, and that is still continuing, although on various episodes and various arms. It's difficult to say where all of this is going to end, but from a prosecution point of view and from an NPA point of view, it comes with some serious complications. It's a nightmare to simply litigate in this piecemeal fashion. They should deal with it in the interest of public and so that people can have confidence restored in those institutions.
Johan, as always, it's lovely to have you. Thanks indeed
Thank
for
you,
your
Viras.
time. That's Johan Kotze, a lawyer, speaking to us on the Robert McBride announcement, or ruling rather, from the Constitutional Court that Parliament has got jurisdiction to oversee or generally have oversight over the affairs of Ipid and not the Ministry of Police.